I was unskilled, and you trained me.
I was forgotten, and you reached out to me.
I was fatherless, and you nurtured me.
I was broken, and you mended me.
As Jesus says, whatever you do for the least of these, you do unto me. Support a child in His name through Compassion International at compassion.com/unto me.
Welcome back to Connect with Jonathan Mark. We have a huge case coming on. We have the mother, Yvonne, of Max Devries. Now, this case took place over 20 years ago, a year after Natalie Holloway in Aruba. Her son went on a jet ski with a man and never came back. So she reached out, and anything I can do to help is what I'm here for. And I'm so thankful that she believes in me and believes in this show to get her help and to give her help. So in this reading, you're going to hear a lot of intense stories, intense revelations. So sit back, listen, and let's try and help her out. Your son is here, Max. Can you please share to everyone what the case is and what is going on?
Mm-hmm. My husband had died, and 18 months later, I took my kids. My husband had a heart attack at home the day before my anniversary, and he died. 18 months later, I took the kids on a vacation. A friend of mine had a timeshare and said, you know what, you guys have really done a great job. Go and celebrate, your strength, and you guys are pulling it together. We lived out of the state without any family or friends. It was hard. We had friends, of course, but not, family and those forever friends that you have. And so we went to Aruba, where I took Max's aunt, Auntie Pat, with us because I knew that I needed some help watching over the kids and that I still wasn't on my best game. I did watch kids for a living. I was a daycare mom. So I had common sense and I was a good mom. I just didn't let him go out with a random stranger, like people like to say, like, how could you do it? Times were different. He was an educated man. He was from the area that I was from. I didn't realize I was being groomed at the time, and they were choosing my son. That I didn't pick up on. And so they went out on a jet ski ride with Junior one day before. They went out, they had fun. For some reason, they found this sandbar. They got off the jet skis, they played on the sandbar. They came back, and everything was fine. The next day, the dad approaches us and wants to take Max on a jet ski ride. And that's the only thing he wants to do that he hasn't done with his own son. And I said, well, why don't you take him? And he said, because he's sleeping. His body is all sore from bouncing around on the jet ski with Max. That's why he wouldn't go with his own son. And I said, well, Max went yesterday. We're good, thank you. And then, he offered to pay for it right in front of Max. And Max, being a kid, he's really excited, putting the pressure on. I want to go. All right, we've already hung out with these people for a couple of days. We went jet skiing, we went parasailing. I didn't think anything of it other than, okay, don't go to the sandbar. Made sure I told the dad that. He was, like I said, a very educated man. He knew what the word no meant, but he purposely took Max back to that sandbar where he had said both jet skis has broken down and they could not get back to shore, that Max tied them together. And the way that he tied them together, they weren't able to untie them. I don't know why they would need to untie them. The weather was not terribly like high seas or anything crazy, but he said that they were hanging on. Max took his life jacket off. He swam to shore was one story. Another story was he swam down the side of the water to get help. Another story was, I heard a thump and a bump and Max floated away. Like, you didn't reach out to him. You didn't call for him. You didn't try to save him. No, that was our set agreement. We were saving our energy. So you just watched him float away. Of all the stories, that one makes zero sense. Max came from a sailboat family, very water. He knew his life jacket was his life jacket, his life link. He would never have taken it off no matter what. In the water, he would never have done it. So none of the stories added up at that point. But in my head, I didn't have enough foresight to ask for the consulate for help because we're out of the country. But I did ask for a DNA sample. I did ask for a lie detector test. And he's like, we're not in America. We're not going to do it. So they did nothing. And what made it hard is you had the Aruban Dutch law, you had the maritime law, and we're American citizens. Nobody wanted to get involved in it. Social media wasn't around at the time, and it was chalked up to just a tragic accident of two Americans on a jet ski. And, I had just lost my husband. I didn't have anyone there supporting me to figure out how to get more attention or more help. At this point, I'm just trying to keep my daughter together, myself together. And then, life happens. She goes through her problems of, losing her father and her brother. And it's like a fine balance of how do you keep your dead son's story alive to get help while you're trying to keep your only child alive, while you're trying to figure it all out. It was just a lot of years went by. And then Corey, the detective who did the Paramount, I was introduced to him. And in one phone call, he found out that that's exactly what he said. They're bad guys, Yvonne. The guy has, a criminal sheet.
Oh, he's a rap
against
sheet.
Children. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that he assaulted was with him that day. So those are facts, that I'm not making up. Those are all can be found, on the internet. They can be found in the police department. Those are facts. The man they both know each other.
Yeah.
They were adopted. He abused them. And what happened, in every show you see, what child predators, people who do harmful things, they repeat that pattern. And that's what the kid did. He repeated what he was taught as a child. And Max happened to be that person, the chosen one that day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Max has not, I don't know what happened to Max on the water of Aruba that day. And that's what my goal is try to find out what happened to Max. And I'm sure this case is so difficult, the FBI no longer wants, they're like, no, the man committed the perfect crime. There's no body until either one of them confess. I'm just kind of spinning with no closure, no answers. So it's been 20 years of not knowing what happened to my son.
Oh my God. And I'm hoping just continuous exposure and things like that with your son's case and you will prompt someone or something to happen. And yes, you had the Paramount, like you just mentioned, the show or the movie, and you would assume that at that point that people would come forward. But I think in this situation now, with the amount of exposure that could get to this case, you're hoping that something happens. But your son literally, from the entire time, keeps showing to me that someone around his son is going to speak up or is very close to speaking up. Whether it's a significant other, a friend, or someone, it just seems like someone's going to. When I say speak up, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be like, this is what he said, like directly. But if they overhear things or whatever the case is, it can be helpful to some extent just to bring some validity at times. But that's what he keeps showing to me is that it's either someone already did or it's going to happen. But really the big thing also too is just keeping this case like alive, like in the sense of like continuously putting it in people's like
face.
Yeah, like that's really what it is. It's crazy.
And I'm glad that you said it because I'm at a crossroads now. Is that I myself called up the FBI a couple of days ago, said, like, what do I have to do to get this case reactivated? And they said it's not going to happen. That they closed the case and they're not interested in finding out. Basically, like I just said, he committed the perfect crime. I said, there's no perfect crime. You know what? Somebody knows something. And it's just too hard. You know what? They're not putting any more manpower on it. And I don't know if there's anything I can do at this point. You know, am I wasting my time, continuing to keep it out in the public forum? And she's like, you know what? You and your daughter, need to heal. I'm like, it's been 20 years. Honestly, life continues to move forward. It's never going to be the same from the day that I lost my husband. But I mean, it's not like I'm sitting in the corner crying every day and not functioning. As a mom, you just want to do the best you can, still fighting for your child.
No, and I think that's extremely commendable in the sense that you're doing this, like putting in people's faces so much, because it should be in people's faces. And eventually, I'm hoping that the police or someone just is like, you know what, we need to reopen this case or do something. And also too, like, your son was emphasizing this before as well, is the local police department didn't do justice too, to wherever you're from. Because eventually when you become stateside and he's a state citizen, I'm assuming if that guy from what you just said is from the same area, then there has to be some type of crossover with the police or something. There just has to be. And your son keeps showing to me like, and that's why I use the term like a bus driver or whoever, people drop the ball at times. And that's what he's saying. It was just one of those things where, and it's unfortunate because that's why he keeps showing to me how happy he is that you're, and I know I already said this, keeping it in people's faces. Like you're not dropping it. He does not want you to stop. I can promise you that he does not want you to stop, because how he comes through to me, and aside from him being so young, he's just a very lovable kid from what I see, and a very, like, he just wants his story to obviously remain like in people's faces, but also for you and Dom to get closure. Like that's his big thing. It's more on the closure side of things. And does that mean you're going to probably like heal completely? Definitely not, but at least gives you some type of, something that you can at least know. Because right now it's just like, from what he's showing to me, and I have to be honest with you, what he's showing to me, it's so black and white to me that this son or those two together are like, did some not good things and in the water. Like, I don't even want to say, it's just horrible things that like transpired. And he's showing to me too at the same time that because you're asking for what happened in the water, and what he is showing to me is something as simple as doing something horrible and just removing the body in international water. Like it's like that's kind of what he's showing to. I'm not saying there was like,
right, you just never know. Was he sold?
100%.
Tortured?
100%. And I don't even want to go. That is just like the worst part of it, because it's like it just seems like the worst possible thing happened. And he's saying that because your son is a very like I said, lovable kid. And I keep using that term because he seems like a neighborhood kid to me. Not like, he seems like someone who I would ride bikes with back in the day, or who I would play sports with outside. He keeps basically saying that if you're in point A to point B, right? So you go to point A and someone takes you to point B, it's a concoctive plan, is what he's saying. Because he's saying it wasn't a spur of the moment, let's do this. This seems to have been a really concoctive plan. Like that's what he's showing to me. Because what he's literally, just so you know what I'm seeing in my head, what he's showing to me, and I'm not saying this is literally what happened, but he's showing me paper and like bullet points. When someone does that, that's a sign for me that there was point A, point B, point C. Like there was things that were kind of in place already. And kind of what you mentioned is, it's like it was a perfect storm in the sense of you were going to heal on a vacation. You were going to heal with your family on a vacation, and you just were like, you wanted your kids to have fun. You wanted them to have fun in a very difficult time in their life. And they, like you used the term groomed and things like that. That's exactly what he's showing to me. It's like a perfect storm of sorts. I will tell you this, and he's coming through with a smile. He's playing with his hair, which means he must have had a full head of hair. He probably had the same haircut I had back then, which is like, I call it the Justin Bieber haircut, where your hair is like, yeah. I could show you pictures, and I'm like, why did I do that to myself?
One step next to a bowl cut.
Yes. It was the bowl cut, then it like moved into that.
Leaped over.
Yes, because he keeps playing with his hair, and but he's also saying too, and I wanted to ask you this, do you think a little bit his case was not overshadowed by the Natalee Holloway case? Because he's saying that he felt like, because it was relatively close to the same time of it that it was battling who was going to get resources, essentially.
Yeah, you know what? It was a year apart, and there was no real battle there. That Natalie's parents were still alive, both of them, the mom and the dad, and they had the resources and the money and the team effort to bring more attention. You know, at this point, you know, in my head, I still kind of, you know, until Corey had said that he knew that they were bad, I still was either thinking it could have been a tragic accident. It was almost too hard to go to the point that something sinister had happened. You know, that was almost too hard. But once that came out, I had no problem hitting the floor running, knowing that that's what happened. And this might sound like, to anybody hearing it, why would she even say this? You know, in my head and in my heart, I hope he did die that day on the water, because the thought of him being sold and abused and tortured is worse than him dying that day. Because anybody that bought him, or if he was sold, they weren't loving him up and taking care of him. He would end up having a life of being tortured in the most horrific way continuously until he perished. And as a mom, all I would want him to be is resting safe in his father's arm, whether you take that as God's arms or his dad's arms in heaven. At least he'd be safe there. You know, nobody wants their kid dead, but nobody wants them tortured either. And that's what I think would have happened if he was not already crossed over, that he would just be tortured, living the most horrific moments over and over.
You know what? Like, I don't think that's weird to say at all. Honestly, I really don't. Based on doing all of different types of cases and even your son's situation, I would agree with you in that. I would agree. I would probably, I know it's going to sound tough, but fast and quick and long and torturous. Like, I would rather it be like that. And I'm thinking about from my own perspective, if I was there, make it fast and quick. Don't like make it this long, horrible situation. But again, like the thing that he keeps showing to me is if there's papers and there's bullet points on it and things like that, like things were concocted and planned, it really was a unfortunate perfect storm for these people. Like it just was. And it's horrible. And I'm hoping that this episode, or just this in general, will bring more eyeballs to this and keep it in people's faces, as we've been saying. Really, like keep it in their faces, constantly doing it. And I'm hoping that the FBI or the local police department does their due diligence in this. And it's funny too, because people can look up these police records now. So if people want to, go look it up. I didn't know that it was like that public of like a situation when he was showing it to me. It just looked like he did one of the worst things that I view, aside from murder, is doing horrible things to children. I think that's like the worst of the worst. And I didn't realize it was that public. So if people need to fact check or do their stuff, then go fact check and do your stuff.
Yeah, and that's all I do is, you know what, I won't give the details because, you know what, people are always looking for a reason to come back at you.
Yeah.
But Google is a wonderful thing. You can find anything.
Yep.
You can find the case that Junior was involved with his ex-girlfriend, who he, you know, did horrifically horrible things to her. And it was kind of like parallel to the Natalie Holloway case. You know what? He's not in jail for what he did to Natalie. He's in jail because he killed that Peruvian girl. So when Junior was, you know, screaming Max's name in the middle of the night, and she asks, "Who is Max?" And then he decides, you know, or he says, "We don't talk about Max in this house. Did my dad say something to you?" And she's like, "No, you're talking about this kid in your sleep. Is he your nephew or a cousin?" And he's like, "We don't talk about Max." And now he's drinking and it escalates. And he truly did horrific things to her, which you can find online. And she did the right thing. She brought it up to the police and she contacted me. And because of that, we were able to do the Paramount piece because there was more. It was not just my word that these guys are bad. Now, someone else said he hurt me, harmed me. They dropped the ball on her as well as me again. 2 years probation is all he got for that. 2 years probation, and that's it.
Was his dad still alive at that time?
Yeah, the dad is still alive, and he's continued to still be living now. From what I've heard is Junior has been married, has a child, I believe a son now, and she just left him. Maybe she just found out about this background. I don't know that to be true. I've not reached out to her. I do know from a very reliable person that he was married, had a son, and now she's left him. So for whatever reason, I don't know why.
Oh my gosh. This is an insane situation. Like, this is actually insane. And I guess that's what your son was saying before about like someone connected to Junior being not a credible but not credible source, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because I'm assuming you can't take someone's word if they're screaming something in their sleep. Like, it's like hard.
Well, you know what? She got her case, heard, which is fine, but that doesn't really say anything about what he did with Max or what happened to Max.
Right.
That's just their connection.
100%.
Right. So there's got to be somebody else. You don't just do one bad thing or two bad things in your life.
No.
On that level, You might steal a candy bar. You might steal, something else, and, little things like that. But we're talking about really hurtful things now. And that's something that you escalate to. You grow to that point. You just don't go out hurting people in that manner. You grow to that point. So anyway, there's got to be somebody else out there who's been hurt by them. And that's the person I'm looking for, is another person who's been harmed by them, who wants to come forward or has the strength to come forward to say, this happened to me, or I know this.
Yeah, because it does look like there's quite a few from what your son is like showing to me. And it's, I think where I'm confused at is it's females though. It's like both. It's not just boys, it's males and males and females, or boys and girls, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He's showing me it's both sex. It's not just one over the other, which is, I think, problematic also in the sense. But he's saying that the father would go after boys and the son goes after both. So it's kind of a horrible mix. But I'm hoping that with this episode, someone hears it, gets the courage. And listen, guys, if you want to reach out privately, anonymously, you can. Like, you don't have to put your name attached. I think in the initial reach out, like the initial reach out, if there's validity to what you're saying, then obviously things will have to progress more. But in the initial reach out, if there's validity, I'm sure you will contact them. I can forward it to you. Do you have an email?
He's on social media, Facebook, TikTok, both names is the same, Max to the Millions. They all have, ways that you can do private messaging. Yep. He has, a website, giving to the max at comcast.net. I don't look at that every day just because there's nothing on it, but I do look at it.
Okay.
There is someone out there that knows something, someone who might not know that they have the courage or the strength to do it. You just do it. And you know what? That's how things are solved. I mean, I still have hope, but I don't know. As time goes on, I mean, sooner or later, the dad's going to die. I mean, he's 70-some years old now.
I just personally think the son is the one, from what your son is showing to me, is the one that is going to break eventually, from what he's showing to me. It's not so much it's not the older one. Like, whether it's age or not, I don't think that has to do with what he's showing to me. It just goes by personality trait and things. So he's showing to me like the person that you want to get in front of is him, not so much the father. But when you get in front of him, it will obviously give answers to the father. So it's kind of like, and that's what he's telling, like really showing to me, is that's the key person. And yes, if someone else has been hurt horrifically by them and they step up, that's obviously like another piece to a puzzle in this situation.
Yeah, and I think that's the only way I might be able to grab the attention of the FBI to get it reactivated. At this point, you know what, if they're not saying anything, it's not going to be anything different than what's happened yesterday.
Right.
Just a story of the magnitude of what it is.
No, I know. And I just want to say again, we're all here to help. And anyone here, please reach out to the social medias. We're going to put it in the show notes, the website, the email addresses, the social media profiles. And I just want to say thank you for coming on and sharing your story. It means the world to me that you came on. And guys, please do your part. We need to get something. Like, we have to do something. So please do your part. Yvonne, thank you so much for coming on and being so vulnerable in this situation. And guys, we have been helping so many cases, and I want to continue to do that for all these families. So if you have any information, anything at all, you can absolutely reach out to me at Jonathan Mark Medium on Instagram, or my email, connectjonathanmark@gmail.com. But if you want to go directly to Yvonne, just follow her TikTok and Facebook at Max to the Millions, or send an email to givingtothemax@comcast.net. Thank you so much. And please don't forget to rate and review the show. I will see you next week.